In the Imperial Temple orphanage lived a girl named Bezel, whom everyone hated. Even though she was the candidate for Saint the Kids, and caretakers mocked her and blamed her for everything, Diana was also at the orphanage. And if Bezel was the darkness of the place, Diana was the shining light. The country of Aria was founded by a saint, and everyone from the common folk to the nobility worshipped the goddess. The empire's existence was irrevocably tied to the saints, the temple's flowers. The kids in this orphanage received the goddess's blessing and were born with a special gift. Bezel's skill was healing, which is why she was seriously considered a candidate for saint. However, because of Diana the heroine, she was destined to be nothing more than a saint. The girls were the same age and arrived at the orphanage at the same time. Diana also healed and was angelic. Unlike Bezel, who only healed minor wounds, Diana could instantly heal any injury. At first she tried to compete, but everything fell apart when Diana's tutor showed up at the orphanage. It was Marquis Berloth, whose family, according to rumors, had abandoned her right there. Seeing him take Diana to his mansion, Bezel realized she could never compete with that girl. Due to a strange incident, she not only exhausted her healing gift but lost her healing sight. Then one day, she was ordered to greet Duke Kallios and the young master who wanted to adopt her. She was sure they'd be disappointed and send her back without hesitation. Suddenly, the young Duke Edwin Kallios with black hair and golden eyes stepped forward. At that moment, the protagonist forgot everything and was completely captivated by his beauty. And so she became part of the Duke's family, but despite everything, she was still an outcast, someone nobody truly wanted. Years later, Bezel learned that Diana had healed the Empress, and that's why Edwin would marry her. The protagonist's envy overflowed. Then a subordinate of the Crown Prince contacted her, saying Diana's family was conspiring with the second prince to assassinate the emperor. She received a letter with proof and a vial of potion she was supposed to leave at the Marquis's mansion. But the real target was someone else, and Bezel understood when someone poisoned Diana's tea. The protagonist was immediately arrested and accused of treason and attempted poisoning of the saint. Right after, in her room, they found the letter with the conspiracy proof and the vial with poison. Later she learned those proofs had been manipulated to frame the Crown Prince, and Duke Kallios, the great hero clan, was shamefully exiled because of Bezel's stupidity. Why was all this happening to her just as the guillotine was about to fall on her neck? The protagonist realized that world was a novel, and she was just the villain. Every important person she knew was part of the protagonist's harem, who of course was Diana. Regretting wasting her life on hate and evil, Bezel suddenly opened her eyes and saw herself as a child. Realizing she had returned to her 5-year-old self, she noticed some events from her past life differed from the original script. For example, in the original story, the Kallios family didn't fall from grace and repudiated the heroine after the attempted poisoning of the saint. These thoughts were interrupted by a nun, who burst through the door and started yelling at the girl. After breakfast, she had to rewrite a chapter of the scriptures, and the maid was personally going to check everything. The protagonist remembered that precisely. This nun was the one who tormented her the most. The woman decided that if the girl messed up again, she'd give her a good beating. The protagonist silently stared at her chest, and not tolerating such nerve, the nun hit her hard on the head. Also, the woman had a bad cough and hoped it would pass soon, but Bezel knew that cough and the energy in her chest indicated an incurable disease. The heroine had a healer's vision that let her see the energy of the illness and recognize it by its color. Blue meant an incurable illness, and in her past life, Bezel predicted the nun's imminent death. Deciding a malevolent spirit possessed her, the girl was immediately locked up for a year in a penitence room. When the woman died, as she predicted, the heroine was inexplicably locked up for another year, after 2 years in captivity. She lost all her abilities, so now Bezel decided to stay quiet. Diana was always docile and the heroine disobedient, and as candidates for saints they always compared them. Bezel acted up on purpose, out of pure pride, but now she decided to play it differently. Last year she barely passed the exam with major struggle, because she barely knew how to read or write, but now with her past life experience a simple transcription was a breeze. The heroine wrote a few sentences and horror-only scribbles came out, another fail. She realized her mind didn't sync with her child body. Not surprising since she only learned to read and write in the Duke's family. One day while studying with Edwin, Duke Kallios walked into the room, the young hero. She instantly thought she had to show her manuscripts to her dad, pushing herself hard to do it. She handed the paper to his lordship with trembling hands. Normally, Bezel was rough from insecurity, but they supported her and always calmed her down. Patient and accepting, he opened his heart and started seeing them as family. Reviewing her work, the Duke ruled she just needed practice and perseverance. Wanting to repay the favor, the heroine acted like a model kid. For a whole week, overcoming all her fears, she even managed to finish all the cafeteria food, whose taste made her stomach turn. Suddenly, a nun rushed toward her in the hallway, wearing a gorgeous dress, the kind they wear for important guests. Hearing the order to change, Bezel didn't get why, especially now. This is super sus. The first time she met Duke Kallios, she was 7 right after losing her powers completely, but now she was only 5. No one should be visiting her, or should they? What's going on? No matter how many times she relives this, the heroine's actions shouldn't change the novel's course, but as soon as she saw the guests coming to see her, the girl couldn't help but burst into tears instantly. Since the day the duchy burned to the ground, she never forgot for a second the faces of those who died because of her recklessness. She didn't even think she'd meet them so soon. What a cruel fate. The heroine wanted to make a good impression on the Duke and his son, but tears betrayed her eyes, hiding her deepest feelings as she respectfully greeted his lordship. The Duke was impressed by the young lady's flawless manners. Looking at him, Basil didn't understand how she hadn't noticed the warmth in his gaze before. This man, closing his eyes and bowing his head to hold back tears, also greeted the young lord. Suddenly he stepped up to her, determined to see if she wanted to add anything else. Basil was already at her limit from everything going on, and hearing those words she couldn't hold it anymore and broke down crying. The Duke blamed his son for her tears, but the protagonist knew the only one to blame was herself. Her current body couldn't keep up, with the emotional roller coaster hiding inside. Meanwhile, the high priest apologized for the girl, thinking she was just really shocked. The Callis family was a ruthless cradle of unbeatable warriors immune to blood and tears. But the heroine wasn't crying because of that and thought those rumors were straight-up lies, since she knew how kind they really were. The Duke wanted to take her for an important matter, but the church leader thought Basil was totally useless. But his lordship saw this girl as the last hope, since the kid they sent before couldn't help at all. Hearing this, the heroine understood it was about treating the Duke's second son. This issue had plunged the Callias estate into deep pain for a long time. After receiving a big sum of money, the temple sent them Diana, but even she couldn't heal the Duke's second son. 2 years before his death, but do they already know that Diana's powers didn't work? It seemed like the Duke and Edwin also knew about past life events. But that was impossible, because then they'd also remember how the Callias family was destroyed. Upon hearing the heroine's name, his lordship thought one of his sons was her spitting image. To the high priest's surprise, the girl knew exactly who they meant. She'd met Joshua last year, but it was so brief she almost forgot. Seeing her chance, the heroine wanted to know if Diana really couldn't heal him. Basil couldn't guarantee it, but she'd give it her all if given the chance to try. Edwin thought she was dumb. They came to ask her for a favor, and she asked for permission after scolding her son. The Duke expected the young lady to honor him by visiting the Callias mansion. Happily accepting, she never dreamed she'd arrive so soon at the Duke's mansion. Suddenly the church leader wanted to have a private word with Bexel before leaving. Edwin objected, but the old man just wanted to give a quick piece of advice. As her guardian, the Duke called his son, thinking the girl needed time to get ready. Then the young hero clarified that if anything happened, she could run to them. The joy of returning to the Duke's family almost made him forget the high priest of Dunquesky, who looked at the boy like he was a punk. The old man wanted the heroine to act normal. The leader always demanded not fully healing the sick, so they'd come back to the temple and pay up. If Bexel doesn't heal Joshua, the temple will have to return part of the Duke's huge donation. But if she does, it'll prove Diana's skills aren't all that great. The church wants to return the donation to the Duke and blame the heroine. Bexel is just a cheap replacement for Diana. It's easier to use her and punish her. She wouldn't let them treat her like that, and asked what would happen if she healed the young master. Furious at such boldness, Dunquesky thought maybe he wanted to go to the punishment room. Like Ismael, he was also a healer and was called to the temple a year ago, but only returned a few days ago. Losing his skills and even his voice, the old man decided that since Bexel was raised to be a saint candidate, she had to behave diligently so the goddess would bless her even more. Those false hopes that she'd heard so many times in her past life were like poison, no matter how much Dunquesky's hypocrisy annoyed her. The heroine decided to play along for now, knowing she'd pay for her actions soon. After that, she hurried to the Duke and Edwin, who were already waiting for her in the carriage. At the exit, Edwin wanted to know if the old man had said anything weird. In the past, the young hero didn't like the temple folks, but he still committed to Diana. When she became a saint, feeling a little annoyed, the heroine pretended the boss just gave her a send-off for the trip. After a few hours, Bexel was glad to finally be back at the Callias mansion. The Duke understood she needed time to adjust, but wanted her to be with Joshua now. Edwin's brother was suffering from a condition that made his wounds bleed more than usual. When the heroine approached, she decided the first thing was to check his condition. The bandage on the boy's leg was fresh but already soaked in blood. In her past life, Joshua didn't die from blood loss but from a heart attack. Now his heart glowed with an orange light, a sign of an unknown illness that needed treatment. Turning her head and seeing Edwin's heart also glowing orange, Bexel was shocked. Now it was clear it was a genetic disease. His lordship didn't emit that energy, so it was passed down the maternal line, which died long ago. Good thing the heroine found out now. Edwin would be easy to heal, but with Joshua they had to hurry. Seeing her extend her hands toward his heart, the Duke was stunned. At that moment, Dr. Gordon and Lady Gaston returned, with healing herbs for the young master. Seeing a girl with her hand on Joshua's chest, the doctor was horrified. Even knowing she was a temple girl, he couldn't let her touch the hero. His wounds were elsewhere. The lady didn't understand why his lordship brought that girl. Her skills were 10 times worse than Diana's. Gaston was the personal maid of the late Duchess and currently Joshua's nurse, ordering the lady to shut up. The Duke considered Bexel an important guest invited by himself to the mansion. Forcing her to apologize, he turned to Gordon. Deciding he could trust her, the doctor wanted to argue, but Edwin shut him down immediately. Siding with his father, the young hero didn't get it. Did the old man think he and his dad were wrong trying to save his brother? Gordon apologized. And the protagonist was very surprised by how strong Edwin was even at that age. Treatment could begin, but another problem was that Bexel could only release a small life ray. Although the life energy in her body flowed like a torrent, almost none came out. Suddenly she remembered Diana's words about if her gift was weaker, Because the protagonist believed less in the goddess, maybe those words made sense since Bissell kept cursing all the gods. Surely the goddess sent her back in time to give her a shot at fixing all her mistakes, and now if Arya helped heal Joshua, the protagonist was even willing to stop hating Diana and get involved with Edwin. At that very moment, a powerful wave of energy burst from the girl's body, filling the whole room. Everyone was literally frozen by that force, then everything suddenly stopped when they saw the young master still unconscious. Gaston and Gordon feared he might have gotten worse. After checking the boy, the doctor was amazed his wounds started healing out of nowhere. Joshua sat up in bed like he was waking from a deep sleep, rubbing his eyes tiredly. Why was everyone gathered there? They all rushed to him, totally forgetting Bissell's existence. The boy turned his head toward her, trying to figure out who was there, when he heard she was his savior. He was glad his sister kept her promise. The girl's eyes began to close, and Edwin knew she needed to rest. Beagle pretended she was fine, but felt a warm trickle in her nose and a metallic taste, realizing she'd used all her power at once. The heroine passed out instantly and found herself at a banquet honoring the goddess. On this day, the blessed orphan kids showed off their talents. Suddenly, she heard Donkeski's furious shout because he couldn't find her. Normally on this day, she'd be running and hiding in the woods, tired of all the attention. When she got there, she was healing Joshua's wound and asking him to keep it secret. Suddenly, the young master's nanny's voice echoed, and looking at his heart, she decided to heal it fully at the next meeting. Unlike her, who forgot the promise instantly, the boy remembered and looked forward to the reunion. Suddenly, she opened her eyes again and saw Joshua in front of her. Edwin approached him, and she knew he'd lost consciousness. Seeing the hero's heart glow much dimmer, Bissell felt huge relief and decided to keep treating him. But Edwin stopped her since the heroine's nose was still bleeding. While quickly wiping it, the girl wanted to keep going. But she heard she'd been unconscious for a whole day, so before worrying about others, she should worry about herself, Basil. She understood that if Joshua died, the Duke would sink into despair like in her past life. Last time she focused so much on his heart, she didn't heal a single cut, meaning they might doubt her skills. Because the wound stayed there and then no one would heal the boy's heart. That's why she wanted to keep healing. But suddenly the Duke and Gordon showed up, also opposing her. His lordship remembered his son's story about how a sister healed his cut knee in the woods, but the boy hadn't given details before. Now it was clear why the Duke's family took Bissell in during her past life after Joshua's death. Someone realized a hereditary disease had taken him to the grave, and then they remembered the boy's story about her, and went looking for her. Now his lordship hoped the heroine could fully heal his son, to which she gladly agreed. The only person who opposed this was Gordon, who as a doctor was amazed by this girl's talent. However, such a huge sacred power could destroy the body from the root. Proof of this is that, at the moment she lost consciousness, the girl's heart stopped. In her past life, Bissell ended up in prison accused of poisoning Diana, where she discovered a new skill. The second prince personally led cruel torture sessions, where they even removed her heart, but the heroine stayed alive despite it. She endured indescribable pain, and just when her suffering ended, Bissell opened her eyes again and went back to the past. Only now did she realize that, even though she'd returned, she still didn't feel her chest beating. If she really has no heart, then it turns out she's alive only because she got the goddess's blessing. The doctor concluded that so much energy at such a young age could cause a heart attack. In that case, fully healing the young master could cost Bissell her life. She felt completely healthy. Even though her heart stayed in another timeline, Joshua's heart condition is impossible to know without a thorough exam. And Gordon ignores the cause of his illness, so the heroine shouted that she was ready to keep healing, sparking an argument with the old man. After hearing both sides, the Duke decided that if she continued the treatment and was in danger, they'd provide everything she needed. Seeing the fire of determination in her eyes, he ordered Gordon to prepare all the necessary medicines. Basil decided it was better to use the Raelius herb, which left the doctor stunned because it's super expensive, but he had no choice. Meanwhile, the heroine also decided to check on Edwin's condition. The young master didn't see the need, since he gets medical exams every year. The doctor was intrigued by the girl's idea to test Edwin and wanted to know why. She was healing the heart and not Joshua's wounds. It was an opportunity, and if Gordon guessed it all, the treatment would go way faster. Forgetting he was only 5 years old, the protagonist started explaining the illness. Using complex medical terms, realizing her mistake, she quickly pretended she'd read it in a book. Edwin was shocked to see she already knew how to read. The doctor thought the cause might be in the heart, but clearly the meds weren't enough. He hoped the young heart would heal on its own, but the problem was that the disease affected the heart itself. This kind of illness is hereditary, so Basil also wanted to examine Edwin. Gordon also concluded the genetic disease was inherited from the late Duchess's line. Now he had no excuses and personally admitted the protagonist's skills. The Duke knew the doctor was giving it his all, and now with a clear source, the treatment would go fast. The argument ended, and soon a temple carriage arrived for Basil. The church sent a nun since she spent the day at the Duke's mansion without going back to the orphanage. Now all that was left was to return, but she hoped to see her lord's family soon running toward her. Edwin wanted her to stop calling him young master and use his name. Hearing this and seeing his smile, the heroine was totally shocked. In the carriage, thinking about the changes, she doubted if they'd meet again. Sometime later, the Duke and his kids finally decided on the girl's guardianship. Joshua improved a lot, while Diana couldn't do anything for him. The Duke's advisor Logan disagreed. Since that lady prevented several strong attacks on Edwin, he was curious how she'd explain the lack of lasting effect from her power. The young master knew Logan was responsible for the temple offering budget, and came up with very good excuses. The healing power only worked on those with the will to live, and when Diana's gift stopped affecting Joshua, everything became clear. Then the temple basically sentenced him to death. Taking the blame for all his brother's wounds, Edwin locked himself in his room and didn't come out for days. When he finally did, his gaze was completely different, like the kid suddenly matured. As head of the family, the Duke was happy about that change. But since his father was super worried, Logan thought another crisis could happen any time, and now they could only call that girl from the temple occasionally. However, his lordship understood that meant making donations every time and decided it was more cost-effective to adopt her. Gordon was very interested in his words and sent a telegram to the late Duchess's homeland. It turned out that in her family, there were deaths with symptoms similar to Joshua's. The advisor couldn't believe his ears, or that no one thought to write them. The doctor believed that combining meds and cells' power would heal the young master, but his mature, piercing gaze and great power seemed suspicious. He doubted the adoption. Luck wasn't on his side, because the Duke already loved that cutie who looked like a bunny. Hearing those words from his lordship, Logan shuddered. Edwin, on the other hand, liked her eyes. After returning, the heroine presented herself to the high priest, who demanded a report. The Duke was furious and even sent a request to bring her to his family. Also, since Diana's treatment was ineffective, the duchy demanded a detailed accounting of expenses. Grabbing her by the shoulders, Dunkesky recalled how he ordered her to act normal. Basil pretended to use just a little power so they'd believe it, but the boy's wounds healed instantly. Burning with violet flames, the leader was furious because she messed everything up by healing that trash. The protagonist didn't get it. Did he really want Joshua dead from the start? Thinking that was dumb, Dunkesky decided she'd already tested his obsession with evil spirits, so he ordered her to be thrown into the obedience chamber to be purified at the same time. The leader's face twisted drastically, looking like a demon's. The obedience chamber was deep inside the temple. It was meant to strip powers from kids who didn't please Dunkesky. Back there again. The protagonist decided she wouldn't let them take her power this time. When they brought her food, she refused to eat, thinking it might be drugged. If the Duke already sent an official letter to the temple, they wouldn't just leave her here. Suddenly, she heard a sound like an ancient tongue Diana studied in her past life. Then a magic circle lit up on the floor, and red energy rose in the air. This whole room was built to drain the prisoner's magic power. Basil thought she'd lost her healing skill, but it seemed they'd ripped it away. Her mind started to cloud, and the girl thought in horror this was the end. Opening her eyes again, she saw an adult Edwin who'd come to rescue her. The grown-up heroine thought it wasn't worth risking herself for Basil. After running out of the temple and getting Basil to a safe house in the woods, the hero went after their pursuers. The heroine sincerely hoped at least Edwin believed in her innocence. Then, the guy handed her a vial with a heart that belonged to her. He also decided fear was a feeling foreign to family. Callias the Duke prepared the adoption papers so Basil was family and had nothing to fear. After saying this, he took her hand and ran. But the soldiers caught up. She pushed him away and counterattacked, taking down one pursuer with her sword, but the enemy's blade stabbed her in the chest. Edwin shuddered and fell to the ground. Trying to save him, Basil ignored the soldiers arriving. It was useless. Wiping her tears, the hero felt powerless watching them fall, ignoring the warrior's screams. She heard the moment Edwin's heart stopped beating. At that second, an explosion of energy flooded her, wiping out the enemies. Hearing the soldiers scream, she begged the hero not to leave her. Suddenly, the heroine woke up in the Duke's arms as he carried her out of the obedience chamber. Right then, temple servants led by Dunkesky barged in. What's this chaos? Basil felt the sinister aura still radiating from him, and was thankful her power stayed intact. Your Excellency found this place thanks to a little medicine pouch that belonged to the heroine. While dragging her here, the pouch fell from his pocket. Searching for the girl, the Duke saw it and sensed something was wrong, glaring furiously at Dunkesky. He decided the leader needed to hurry with explanations. The old man let out a nervous laugh and explained this place was used to exorcise evil spirits. The church leader thought the heroine was possessed, but His Excellency couldn't understand how they could be so cruel to kids. Deciding an evil spirit had possessed Dunkesky, the hero began to draw his sword when Pope Montu II descended to them, also wanting to clarify what was happening. He had come to congratulate the high priest, whose saint candidate healed the Duke's son, but instead saw the Duke trying to stab the priest in a room that shouldn't exist in the orphanage. Dunkesky hurried to clarify the room was only for educational purposes. Ignoring his words, the pontiff approached the heroine, hoping she'd remember him with a kind smile. He wanted to hear her side of the story, hoping to believe her. Tearfully, the heroine confessed what that place was. Gently stroking her, Pope Montu decided to excommunicate Dunkesky from the church, and all involved clerics would be severely punished according to the sacred scriptures. Basil just left out that in that room they stole energy from the kids because she had no proof. The Duke wanted the temple's documents to hand over to the Imperial Investigation Office to handle the case. He also returned to take the girl and place her under his custody. Accepting all his requests, the pontiff left the rest in the hands of his lordship Basil. He saw a white glow emanating from Pope Monteos's body. A sign of weakness from old age has no cure, so he decided at least to pray for him once everyone left. She wanted to meet one last time with the former chief priest. The Duke was surprised by such a request. but the heroine just wanted to check something. As she descended toward Dunkeski, her body was wrapped again in a purple flame. It was the same energy as the soldiers who chased Edwin and her in her past life. Back then, she destroyed them all with her sacred power, and now she wanted to try the same. Eventually, the purple flame vanished, and the old man lost consciousness, after which the girl left. Finding her at the exit, the Duke noticed the heroine had a fever and decided to speed up Logan's departure. Logan understood it might be better to stay at the temple and perform a quick healing ritual, but Basil didn't want to stay a second longer. That's why she decided to leave immediately. Falling asleep in his lordship's arms, she opened her eyes a while later. In the room where she lived in her past life, her new personal maid Tara entered, eager to meet her lady. This girl was one of the few who treated the heroine warmly in her previous life, but Basil thought the maid's attitude was fake. Like everyone else, she compared her to Diana behind her back. After dismissing Tara, the heroine later realized her mistake. But it was too late now. Basil was full of determination to change everything and to start. She cheerfully greeted the maid. In her past life, the servants whispered behind her back, criticizing her appearance, so this time she wore a nice dress. Tara discovered with horror that the lady was pretty small and fragile for her age. Looks like the temple orphanage didn't feed her well, and the maid decided to take care of that. Also, she wanted to give her lady Dr. Gordon's medicine to avoid fainting when using her power. Despite the bitter taste, she had to take it all, because without it, they wouldn't let her treat the young master. Suddenly, Lady Gaston entered, glaring furiously at Tara, not understanding what they were doing there. Looking at the heroine, she thought that under other circumstances, she wouldn't even be allowed to step inside. The maid wanted to defend the lady, but Basil decided Gaston was right. Everyone in the house respected that woman, and you couldn't mess around with her. So to change her attitude toward her, the heroine decided to prove she could help Joshua. Upon reaching the young hero's room, he was glad his heart hadn't worsened. Gordon noticed the girl looked healthier and was happy to hear it was thanks to his remedies. Joshua hated taking medicine, but if today's treatment worked, he wouldn't have to anymore. Last time, Basil managed to suppress the main source of the illness, and now only the secondary symptoms remained. To prevent the disease from taking deeper root, they had to act carefully, though the boy would feel some pain. Starting treatment with her power, she practically freed him completely from the ailment. Unable to bear Joshua's painful moans, Gaston suddenly shoved the heroine at the most critical moment. Gordon was shocked and furious at such a blatant interruption of the treatment. However, Madame decided the treatment couldn't be painful. Calmly standing up, Basil's first question was about the boy's condition. Hearing that his wound itched, Gaston worried it might reopen when removing the bandage. They saw the cut had completely disappeared, leaving only a red mark. The protagonist knew the treatment had to continue, and for that she needed to focus more on the sacred energy. Hearing that Joshua could have been seriously hurt because of her, the woman paled with horror. Therefore, the protagonist hoped the lady wouldn't interrupt her again during the healing process. Gaston got mad at such audacity, but the boy backed his sister and started scolding the nanny. Gritting his teeth in anger and lowering his gaze in guilt, Gaston apologized to Basil. However, the protagonist wasn't offended, understanding the woman was just very worried about Joshua. So after promising to heal him no matter what, Basil counted on her trust to make it happen. As help, the doctor gave her a remedy to ease the pain and would boost the effects of the previous medicines. The protagonist was totally blown away by Gordon's mastery, who was feeling mad proud of it when suddenly Edwin burst in to check on his brother and see how the girl was doing. He accidentally called him young master, and the hero reminded him of their deal when he heard that. Joshua also wanted a more chill and close deal, and immediately started flexing to his brother that his wounds healed thanks to Basil's power. When looking at Lady Gaston, the protagonist was shook by the disgusted way she looked at Edwin. The woman decided that the young master should head to his sword training already to lighten the mood. The doctor suggested everyone leave the room so Joshua could rest, but the young hero wanted the girl to stay and play with him. While walking with Edwin down the hall, Gordon was hyped that he still made time for his brother despite being busy. Remembering the doctor made a new medicine for Basil, the young master wanted him to take good care of her. The sharp eye of an old doc instantly detected that the guy had feelings for the girl. Edwin blushed and ignored those words like they were nonsense and walked away fast, but Gordon wanted to know if he should report to the Duke that Gaston's attitude toward the young master had gotten way worse after the Duchess died. That woman suffered hard and ended up clinging to Joshua, who looked a lot like his mom. Edwin could understand her anger toward him since Joshua got hurt because of him and would be bedridden for a long time. Meanwhile, decked out in jewelry, the young hero started flexing in front of his little sis. When he suggested playing the protagonist didn't expect they'd use the family jewels, putting a sapphire ring on her finger, Joshua clarified that all those valuable items belonged to his mom, and noticing the ring was too big, Basil decided to hang it around her neck with a ribbon from her dress. The young hero was hyped and hugged the girl tight. Watching them from the door, Gaston was shook by what he saw. After hours of playing, they heard a knock on the door, and the head maid and Tara came in saying it was time to wrap up, and the kid didn't want Basil to leave, but she calmed him down. Quickly putting the jewels back in the jewelry box, she noticed Lady Gaston had calmed down a bit. She didn't even get why her relationship with Edwin was so tense. The protagonist decided to ask Tara about it on the way to her room apparently. It all started with the last walk the kids took where Joshua got hurt and got way worse upon hearing that Beazle understood that in her past life, he died and Gaston hated Edwin forever. Tara also found out the kids were playing with a sapphire ring and that really threw her off. Turns out that ring was the late Duchess's favorite jewel. The young master rarely took it out of the jewelry box. And Gaston better not mention that the heroine saw it shortly after the Duke and Edwin left for the temple to sign Basil's guardianship papers. His Excellency planned to go alone, but the young master decided to keep a close eye on him. During his absence, they left Logan in charge of the mansion. Joshua's treatment would be postponed until his return, and the heroine needed to figure out how to spend her free time. After getting paper and pen from Tara, she decided to start by making a plan. First things first, she had to be kind. Punish those who hurt her friends and not die some pathetic death she also needed. Capital to not always depend on the Duke, but for that she had to find a plant, plus Basil wanted to find her heart, which in her past life stayed with Edwin, but now no one knows where it is with all this. She had to be careful not to draw the Duke family's attention. Suddenly Lady Gaston burst into her room with other servants. They wanted to search Basil's room because a sapphire ring had gone missing, plus a servant found a piece of her dress in the hallway between her room and Joshua's. Basil knew it was better to cooperate in these cases, especially if you're innocent watching them search. She remembered when she hid the jewels with the boy. Suddenly the servant who found the ribbon found the ring in her drawer. Terrified, Basil screamed. Trying to convince them she didn't do it, Gaston demanded to know how the hell the ring got to her room. The situation was critical and the young girl was totally confused. Just then Joshua arrived. Demanding they stop accusing his sister, fearing for his condition, the woman wanted to take him back with her. The maid who found the ring thought the young thief had tricked the young master how to explain her ribbon in the hallway. Basil knew that when she tied the ring to the ribbon, only Gaston and Tara saw her and Joshua, so how did this maid know the ribbon belonged to her? Everyone stared in shock at the maid, who thought they were taking a little girl's words way too seriously. The girl had no beef with the young lady, so why would she falsely accuse her? The Duke and Edwin, who entered then, decided they'd investigate the matter themselves. Gaston wanted to defend his subordinate, but the maid suddenly started yelling. Thinking there was nothing more to ask, his lordship decided to make it clear that if Basil turned out innocent, the real culprit would be guilty of more than just theft. They'd also be accused of slandering the heroine who saved the Duke's son's life, and was personally recognized by him. Edwin added that the Kalias don't forgive anyone who harms their family, and the punishment would be savage. Gaston defended the maid again, convinced she couldn't have done something like that, but suddenly the maid dropped to her knees and begged for forgiveness. She was being chased by debt collectors, and the amount was so huge she was forced to steal. She took the jeweler's ring. But the disappearance was discovered fast, and she had to act. The Duke sentenced that if she valued her life, she would never have done something like that. After restraining her, the soldiers took the maid away by his lordship's orders. Basil understood how insanely lucky she was. If they'd accused her, the punishment would have been worse than death. Blushing with shame, Lady Gaston apologized to the heroine for judging her without proof, not expecting that from the woman. The young woman accepted the apology and decided to pretend nothing happened, though she felt guilty about what went down. The lady decided to leave the Duke's mansion, realizing she'd blamed Basil all this time when really she was just helping Joshua. But the boy understood she simply missed his mom a lot. The protagonist hoped they could get along with Gaston in this life, even feeling a little sorry for the lady. She also knew the woman had seen Diana's miracles and didn't fully trust her powers, so she was ready to put in the work. However, Gaston actually decided that when she met that lady, she'd tell her not to worry about Basil. When Diana arrived at the mansion, she was worried about the protagonist the whole time, wanting to help her level up her skills. Now Basil understood why. At first, they treated her with so much distrust, but now she worried about what Diana's words really meant. She also noticed Joshua had gotten really sad after his nanny left, so to keep him from feeling lonely, the protagonist decided to spend more time with the boy. Edwin was training and hated being watched while doing it. Basil was eager to see his combat skills, which were already sick, but she thought it'd be rude. Slowly, peace and order returned to the estate. The servant's attitude toward the protagonist improved, and another maid replaced Gaston when she had free time so she could focus on Joshua. The girl went for walks in the estate's forest, and the reason was to search for her future capital of pink petals, which was fairy grass. This plant is priceless for cosmetology and medicine, and only grows on the Kelios estate, but for some reason it wasn't anywhere to be found. Suddenly she heard the sound of swords, and realized she was near the training field. Unable to resist, she hid in the bushes, and saw the young hero struggling to defend himself against an adult opponent. His opponent didn't get how the young guy would become the heir of the Kalios when he couldn't even move properly, getting no response. The trainer thought the boy was deaf too. Edwin knew relaxing his legs increased speed, but against a stronger rival, he had to take a firm stance. The trainer didn't want to hear that nonsense and ordered him to grip his sword. The man's name was Sven Zoriak, one of the Duke's knights, but a leg injury forced him to retire. In her past life, Basil never saw their training and didn't even know the hero treated Edwin so rough. Hearing how he mocked such a weak heir, the heroine jumped out from the bushes and told Sven to shut up, starting to punch him with her tiny fists. She knew Edwin would lead the Kalias family to glory and prosperity in the end, the famous knight. Sven showed up before the Duke looking rough. She did it because he insulted her lord, but it turned out Edwin wanted that training. The verbal provocation was part of the training, and no one expected the heroine to fall for the Shadow Unit warrior's trap. Guardians of Order served the Duke. Edwin wanted to command some but had to beat Sven in combat first. With so much on the line, the knight seriously stepped up his training, but despite everything, his lord fully trusted his comrade, who had saved him countless times. Hearing this, Beazle apologized to the hero, impressed by his combat skills. She admired his bravery but knew sacrificing for others could bring devastating consequences. Edwin was intrigued. What the heroine was doing in the training field, she pretended to have read about an interesting plant and decided to look for it. To her surprise, hearing the description, the guy knew exactly where to find it. She was right, and then sitting by the big tree. Beazle marveled at the flowers at her feet. How the hell did Edwin find such a strange plant before Joshua got sick? They explored the forest and found that clearing. Seeing a scratch on his cheek, she moved to heal it, but Edwin rejected her. He knew the effect his power had on her. Beazle knew using too much power at once would affect her, and now she was fine. The young hero knew she'd fake being okay even if she wasn't. When she fainted, she thought, "How long will they wait for me to wake up?" With wide open eyes, she couldn't believe he cared that much. Red with embarrassment, Edwin hoped she wouldn't do it again after going back in time. Beazle wanted the Duke to be kind again. Now she wonders if she can dream of a future by his side. Gordon healing the young master. He also noticed Sven was overdoing it with training. When it ended, he gave her the Rios plant to strengthen her body, but the girl thought, "I got something better for him." Smelling the fairy herb in her bag, the doctor was shocked. Collecting herbs was his passion, but he'd never found the fairy herb. He heard Beazle plan to grow it and was stunned. Impossible with that twig, the seedling would die before blooming. She knew where to find more. But it was a secret, and if Gordon refused silent with the hooked doctor, she remembered she found it in the shadows without water. It was a parasitic plant, and the doctor hoped Beazle would bring bark or soil next time. However, Gordon didn't get how she planned to use that flower exactly. In her past life, Diana made sachets, but she only managed to make 2 due to scarcity. Hearing it was a trade secret the doctor didn't understand when she opened her business. The sachet Beazle now held would be a bribe. Now they were partners in crime. Inspired by such generosity, Gordon was ready to plant the whole garden with them. In this world, there's almost everything except a medicine that delays aging and cares for the skin. So using that plant as a base, the heroine wanted to start a cosmetics business. Suddenly Tara came in to tell her lady the Duke wanted to see her. Edwin wanted to go with Beazle. But according to the maid, His Excellency wanted to see her alone. Very surprised by this, the girl soon arrived at the Duke's place, who was already waiting. Alone with her, he opened a secret passage in the wall, inviting the heroine to follow him. The man wanted to introduce her to someone as they went down. The light started to dim and the Duke carried her so she wouldn't trip. In her past life, he seemed cold and strict. But now his warmth comforted her. This passage led to a secret chamber known only to the Callias family. There, treasures from when her family still fought in religious wars were kept. Among many sacred relics, his lordship decided to gift Beazle a teddy bear. It's an artifact created by a secret cult that trapped souls in objects, and from today it would protect her. First, she had to infuse the toy with her sacred power. Then, the teddy wouldn't just be her guardian but also a symbol of Callias' protection. The girl gently placed her hand and suddenly, the toy started sucking her energy. She feared fainting again, but the Duke was there ready to catch her. Once the guardian was activated, the most important part remained, giving it a name. Caught off guard, Beazle struggled big time to improvise something clever. Barely out of her mouth, the name Mihailo the bear shot up into the air. After a backflip and a championship landing, Mihailo greeted his lady with joy. From that day on, the Duke showered her with gifts. Pretending they were protection charms, Callias didn't want to bother the servants sorting gifts, so Beazle chose to go for a walk. Joshua was training hard to strengthen his heart, and Gordon was busy with the plants. The only option was to hang out with Edwin, who was currently out in the field training with Sven. To avoid showing up empty-handed, the heroine decided to help the servant bring food to the young master. She had thought several times that those 2 training sessions seemed like the strong bullying the weak. When she entered the field, she saw the knight turning his back and fiercely attacking the boy. The worst part was that this time they were fighting with real swords, not wooden ones. Edwin was horrified to see Beazle arrive because when Sven gets an attack, he lashes out at everyone. The knight noticed his opponent looking away and started scanning around, so the young hero had no choice. Edwin decided to ask if Sven regretted saving his father. This was the most painful topic for the knight, and now at least he would focus only on him. Sven, with a heavy sigh, was surprised at how shameless his opponent was. Seeing the knight shift his weight to the left, the boy knew he was about to attack and got ready. To everyone's horror, Sven turned and lunged straight at the heroine. The girl, frozen with fear, raised her sword to block the hit. At that moment, the blade flew out of his hand and landed far away, with one hand on the sword and the other protecting Beazle. The Duke was in shock, trembling with fear. The hero chickened out and decided he didn't want to hurt the young lady, believing the knight's words. His lordship considered such an act very reckless. Looking at Sven's sick leg, he understood that his body was no longer what it used to be. The knight got furious, and at that moment, the heroine saw a purple flame coming out of his leg. Sven laughed and decided the Duke had ruined his life, and was now throwing scraps at him with a brat. Drawing his knife, he was ready for what he'd been planning for so long. Calmly blocking the attacks, his lordship decided to give the knight one last chance by jumping to the side. Sven wanted the master to feel the same pain he did. Moments later, Bizzle stopped sensing the night's sinister energy. While the servants carried away the body, the Duke apologized to the kids for what they had seen. Before leaving, Edwin decided to give his father the note he found in Sven's room. According to it, someone had provoked the knight to act that way. His lordship was shocked to know his son understood everything but kept training. Since the young hero didn't want him to use his power on him, the heroine healed his wounds with medicine. Remembering that violet glow, she regretted not using her sacred power in time. Edwin, like everyone else, knew Sven would explode sooner or later, but still the Duke did nothing because he owed the knight his life. The young hero didn't change mentors thinking he could hold on until it was all over. But it seemed his successes only dragged Sven deeper into despair, knowing he had also suffered those mockeries in his past life. Basil wanted Edwin to share that with her. After a while, the heroine was still sad and the young hero decided to distract her by chatting. Seeing a teddy bear from the warehouse, he wondered if the girl had been able to activate it too. He also learned from Edwin that Mika had it. The toy options were Guardian and Warrior, but according to the boy, the teddy's most useful skill was turning giant. Since classes were cancelled today, and they'd gone through a lot of trauma, Edwin hoped Basil would agree to sleep with him. Even though he knew he was just calming her down, the heroine always loved him for his good heart. Over the next few months, she quietly healed Joshua and spent afternoons with old Gordon. They already considered her part of the family, and the girl felt like life was finally getting back on track. One day she saw a strange carriage through the entrance window, although they weren't expecting visitors, and the girl felt like life was finally straightening out. One day she saw through the front window a strange carriage even though no visitors were expected. When she heard that Lady Diana from the Marquis Varello's family had come to see her, she was totally stunned for the occasion. The diligent maids dressed the lady in a stunning gown even though she didn't think it was necessary. The guest found out about Joshua's healing and wanted to apologize to him for not being able to do it herself. Basil was going to use this chance to show how much she had changed and become Diana's bestie as she walked into the parlor. The main girl was kinda nervous not knowing how to start the convo, but it sorted itself out when the kid ran up and hugged her to say hi. Like how could Beckel hold a grudge against such a sweet lady? It made no sense. Diana turned to her maid Lily hoping she hadn't forgotten to bring the little cake. Lily snapped back sarcastically that the main girl probably hadn't even tried it. Being the most famous in the capital, Tara nodded. After all, with top chefs like theirs, they didn't order takeout. Plus, the heroine's maid decided to serve tea bought from the Imperial Palace, which pissed Lily off. After bringing everything needed, the servants left the room and the young ladies were left alone. Basil gathered her courage and decided to start by apologizing for her past screw-ups, but as soon as she began, Diana cut her off mid-sentence saying she'd been super worried about her Lady Barrett. Lot had heard that since she couldn't heal Mr. Joshua, the heroine was being held in this mansion according to the Marquis. To guilt-trip Diana, the Duke took Basil out of the orphanage and pretended he'd healed him. The main girl was shocked by the lady's take on her failure and decided to clear up her success. This made Diana jump. Since the treatment wasn't instant, Beagle stayed at the Duke's mansion watching over his son. Lady Barlow felt the kid wasn't being honest because his lordship found her in the discipline room. The heroine didn't get how she knew about that room. Didn't Dunquesky keep it top secret? According to Diana, a palace knight visited the Marquis and spilled the high priest's actions, but that didn't explain how she knew something meant to be super secret. Or did it? Plus the lady's behavior today was way different from usual, which Beckel was used to. Looking at her, the heroine noticed with surprise a yellowish glow on the kid's throat, an allergy sign. There were desserts on the table, Diana's favorites. What had caused that awful reaction? Meanwhile, Lady Barlow opened the cake box Lily bought them. She barely took a bite when suddenly she had an attack. Running to help her, Basil told Diana to spit that piece out. Hearing the screams and rushing in, Lily saw the heroine shoving her hand into her lady's mouth. Bickle hoped for help from her, but the maid shoved her hard. That scene was exactly like her past lives, when she was accused of poisoning the saint. Grabbing her shoulders roughly, Edwin wanted the heroine to calm down first. He, like everyone else, knew she wasn't guilty of anything. Only Lily screamed in rage, seeing all poisoning symptoms in her lady, and blaming the heroine. The guy couldn't get how she dared say that about Akalia's family member. Tara personally checked all the food with max rigor and found no trace of poison. Fed up with the silence, Beagle explained Diana had an allergy and if they didn't act, the swelling would spread and she'd die. The maid laid the kid on the bed, and right after the heroine gave first aid. Edwin hoped she hadn't overdone it with her powers. Suddenly Lily thought the heroine could also help her lady with the itchy rash. The guy thought the maid was way too demanding. Basil was already healing with all her might when minutes later the doors burst open and Marquis Barlow came in. Looking at Diana in horror, in her past life the heroine had already met him when the second prince tortured her. Running to the bed and staring at the dazed kid, the Marquis hoped her skills were okay. The only thing he worried about was the chance Diana might turn into a saint. The Duke who entered then thought it was disgusting that the lady barely survived, and the Marquis only cared about her strength. After checking the kid, Gordon concluded Basil had given first aid like a pro, and her life wasn't in danger. The Marquis decided that since the heroine was responsible for this incident, she had to take charge of Diana's treatment. The reason for his suspicions about Basil, it was that Lady Barlow's allergy started after having tea at this house, deciding to turn a blind eye. Faced with such an accusation this time, his lordship decided the Marquis should replace the girl's maid. The man knew the poisoning was probably caused by apricots, so how could Lily know they were in the sweets? However, Gordon was sure that apricots were never used for cooking on his estate since Joshua was allergic to them, and therefore, they never served dishes with those fruits, so Basil clarified that these apricots were in a cake the maid had bought at a cafe. Lily went pale with fear and the Maki realized he'd forgotten his ban again and started yelling furiously. Suddenly, Diana blamed herself, thinking she just wanted to share a sweet with Basil. Then she lied, saying the protagonist loved sweets so much, she'd snatched them from other kids at the orphanage. The Marquis and Lily thought the protagonist stuffed herself with cake and forced the rest on the young lady, but actually Basil was trying to get a piece of cake out of her mouth, and Tara and Edwin saw everything. The Marquis thought it was ridiculous, but the Duke, motioning for silence, always forgave her rudeness because Diana was the protagonist's friend. Now they'd gone too far, and His Excellency won't investigate why the young lady lied. In the future, neither the Marquis nor his family should set foot on this estate. And right now, everyone must leave. Before leaving, Diana hoped they'd let her heal Basil, whom she accidentally hit while saving. The protagonist had never been healed with divine power before, and the sensations were super weird. Plus, it was odd why the young lady's divine power glowed violet. Diana grabbed Basil by the shoulders and decided she should be at the Duke's mansion. Then, like nothing happened, she turned and followed the Marquis. They planned to show the spoiled hero who really deserved to be the saint. Suddenly, the young lady approached Basil and apologized for everything said. She was sad she couldn't heal Joshua, and a little jealous of the heroine's power, so she hoped for forgiveness. Basil took her hands with a smile, wanting to be her friend and develop their powers together. After Diana left, the Marquis' family admitted their mistakes and sent an apology letter to the Duke. After this, the heroine spent 2 whole days bedridden. Time passed and some things didn't add up, like the violet glow of Diana's power. It can't mean evil if the young lady isn't just the saint, but also the protagonist of this story. If anyone's really suspicious, it's the Marquis, obsessively sick over Diana's power. He pressures her to compete with Basil. He's been planning to destroy the Duke's family for a while, but his moves are still unpredictable. Soon it'll be the festival honoring the goddess's birth, where they'll meet again. Unfortunately, royal members will attend the celebration. There's no way out this time. The heroine won't get in the way, just a kid adopted by the Duke paying for his kindness. Suddenly, Gordon entered her room with news that he'd successfully planted the first fairy grass sprouts. At first, the heroine was hyped, but seeing some wilted sprouts coming out of the ground, she got bummed instantly, deciding they just needed time. The doctor still wondered what the girl planned to do with those herbs. First, he asked if that amount of grass would yield about 2 bottles of first press oil. Hearing her plan to make it happen, Gordon thought it was sick, but the marketing had to be smart. And the goddess festival was perfect. Suddenly, the doctor remembered the Marquis and Diana would be at the party, and they'd decide who'd be the saint. He decided to use the chance to turn Basil into the saint and kick those arrogant fools' asses, even though the heroine didn't want to be first. Gordon thought they had to win that race. After that, the herb research started gaining momentum. It helped that in her past life, Basil was the CEO of a cosmetics company, so she combined. Her past experience with the herbs from this world. All the cosmetics were tested on Tara, who was hyped about the results. Now all that was left was to register the patent at the Merchant Guild, but the butler flat out refused. To let her go out alone, the protagonist quickly reminded him she had a teddy bear. The servant shook his head skeptically, and then Mihailo snatched the bell from his hands, glaring at his trophy. It was game on. To take out anyone threatening Basil, the butler decided such a guardian would come in handy later. The protagonist and Tara headed to the Trade Guild on Main Street. Once inside, they couldn't figure out why so many people were gathered there. Also, a kid with a super sketchy vibe was sitting alone at a table. Soon it was Basil's turn, and she had to list her guardian's name on the application. The Duke was off limits because he'd find out everything instantly. When she wrote Gordon's name, she also got an invite to the Imperial contest with a 500 gold coin prize. Suddenly, the protagonist felt that suspicious kid's intense gaze on her. She didn't want to fight a kid, but she also couldn't let anyone snatch her business money. So with full attitude, Basil made it clear the contest prize was hers. The stranger was totally thrown off, not getting what was going on. At that moment, someone accidentally pulled off his hood, but the kid quickly put it back on. Still, the protagonist caught a glimpse of his red hair, a signature trait of the Imperial family. The purer the blood, the brighter the color, and this kid had bright red hair and emerald eyes. That's why the second prince was always embarrassed by his brown hair and dark green eyes. This hooded stranger was obviously the Empire's Crown Prince Caesar Astarot from the novel. The young heir had gone on a secret trip, got attacked by assassins sent by the Empress, survived but was badly injured, and his assistant secretly contacted the Berlot family to send Diana. Remembering those events, Basil rushed to help him. In the past, this attack kicked off the Crown Prince's tragedy, and the heroine's mistake was the final blow. So now Basil wanted to make up for her guilt. Running down the alley, she saw a mercenary with a bloody sword approaching the already wounded Crown Prince. He used the Imperial contest to find a trusted advisor. Everyone in the palace was under the Empress's control, meaning no one there could be trusted. So he needed someone outside her influence, and as one of the contest organizers, he was watching the participants. Everything was top secret, and Caesar couldn't figure out where the info leak was coming from. With a quick move, he stabbed an attacker right through the chest with his sword. But there were too many enemies, and one snuck up behind him. After taking a stab in the gut, The young crown prince braced for death. Then he spotted a teddy bear that knocked the mercenary flying with one hit. Turning to the other fighters, he wanted to see who'd be the first to mess with him. Meanwhile, Beezle sincerely hoped His Highness was okay. Suddenly, Caesar decided he didn't need anyone's help, got up on his own, and the heroine thought he was out of danger. Plus, he'd already called his servants and the bear was handling the mercenaries, so they could leave. But then the crown prince staggered and fell to the ground. Then, Beezle saw a deep wound in his abdomen and freaked out. In the original novel, he wasn't supposed to die now, but the story had already changed. So the heroine hesitated, activated the bear's giant mode, and handed it to the boy to get him somewhere safe. Before that, she also gave him first aid. Afterward, Bezel returned safe and sound with Tara. The maid was desperate over the young lady's disappearance and was about to alert the Duke. Getting into the carriage, the heroine honestly hoped the crown prince was okay. For several days she read the paper, and luckily the world's events hadn't changed. Meanwhile, the festival's second day arrived and Tara prepared a dress for the young lady. But Bezel decided to go in rags from the orphanage, also wearing the tracking bracelet the Duke had given her on her wrist. It was a tracking artifact she had to wear at all times. After the last raid in the past, the heroine showed up at the party in a fancy dress, thanks to her lord's sponsorship, but it was way too flashy, and Bezel heard a ton of criticism aimed at her. Only one dude gave a legit explanation that it was weird to see a marginated girl rocking beautiful dresses at that moment. The heroine's healing skills got worse every year after the last lockdown in the punishment room. She realized they straight up stole her powers, and now the Duke wanted her to attend a joint breakfast. Before heading to the temple, when she got to the dining hall, she saw everyone was already gathered as they served the food. Edwin immediately cut everything off, especially for Joshua in the past life. This house looked totally different because of the Duke's youngest son's death. Seeing the changes from before filled Bezel with confidence. Suddenly, Your Grace noticed the heroine's perfect manners. She learned that in the orphanage, but actually she learned all that at home. In the orphanage, they only used wooden spoons. Bezel didn't even know what the other utensils were for, so during their first dinner together, she was dying of embarrassment. But the Duke explained everything super kindly and simply, and the heroine wondered what holiday they were celebrating by having dinner all together. It turned out the whole dinner was in her honor. The kid who gets the most service talents is chosen as a saint. Nobles trade gold coins for talents and buy crafts made by the orphanage kids, or their skills. Bezel was determined to win and hoped the Duke would let her keep using the fairy herb. Edwin didn't get why she didn't want to use her skills and just focus on healing, but the protagonist decided that even with her skills, she couldn't compete with Diana, so she apologized to the heroes for letting them down. The Duke looked at her furious and decided to find out who told her that. Joshua rushed to remind him that she was a good healer who even managed to cure him, the Duke's son. He also decided she could do whatever she wanted since he'd always have her back, despite the 100 talent limit per family. Your Grace had already exchanged a lot of gold to help Bezel win. What surprised the heroine most was that they were going to attend the service days at the temple in the original story. The Duke was a workaholic and never went to those events. And Edwin was hardly ever at the mansion. After eating, Bezel headed to the temple to set up her booth. Gordon had to play the pack mule and help set everything up. He didn't get why the girl wasn't rushing to visit her old teachers. The doctor was sure everyone treated her kindly. She's an adorable kid. At that moment, the director, Lauren, came over and decided to share a bit about the heroine. When Bezel's skills first showed up, Lauren started taking great care of her. The attention the director gave was insanely important to the heroine. But as soon as Diana showed up, Lauren focused completely on her and started looking down on Bezel, which gave her a major inferiority complex, and now she openly mocked the heroine's appearance. Right then, 2 more nuns approached and looked at the girl with mockery. The women remembered the protagonist had cured the Duke's son. After Diana, they felt sorry for the Duke's doctor. Sure, this girl took all the credit for his achievements. The old man couldn't take it anymore and decided to personally vouch for the heroine's healing gift. Knowing he was His Excellency's personal doctor, the women freaked out. Meanwhile, Gordon hurried to clarify that the Duke valued the young lady a lot. Bezel decided to play along and showed them her tracking bracelet, gifted by Lord Pale. Impressed, Lauren started apologizing for her subordinate's rude words. To the doctor's surprise, the protagonist agreed to forgive them with a smile. Also, she didn't get why she'd picked one of the central most prestigious spots on the grounds. It turned out it was all because of Diana, who was now running toward her in the temple. Bezel always got the worst spots, so Diana could shine more. Suddenly, the protagonist noticed the girl's outfit was different from her past life, and it was the same as what she used to wear. Then Bezel felt a weird, uneasy vibe inside. Her paths with Diana compared to the previous life were totally opposite. Meanwhile, the girl happily greeted Gordon and was genuinely surprised that the Duke's personal doctor was helping the protagonist. The Marcus's maid looked at Gordon with suspicion. Thinking he was the one healing the sick instead of Basil, the doctor was shocked and pissed off by such a misunderstanding. Diana quickly stepped in to clear things up, saying that if anyone else healed instead of the protagonist, it would be breaking the rules. The protagonist knew those words. Sounded like she was already breaking the rules in that situation. If it were just her, she wouldn't care. But Gordon and the whole duchy were involved. Smiling in response, she totally agreed that gaining talents at the expense of someone else's skill was straight-up cheating. Absel didn't care at all that the Marquis's maid was personally watching her this time. She wasn't gonna back down to Diana and wanted to compete fair and square. However, 30 minutes into the event, the doctor looked super worried, all because they hadn't had a single guest yet. Most of the nobles who came here initially decided to get treated by Diana. No surprise there, since getting healed by a saint candidate only cost 10 talents. Plus, the Marquis was bringing all the well-known nobles straight to his protege. Gordon knew if things kept going like this, they wouldn't sell a thing before the Duke showed up. But Basel stayed chill. Their product was one of a kind, and they had a secret weapon. Right at that moment, none other than Madame Claude made her entrance. She was the current emperor's aunt, and the heroine went all out after her. Diana's healing powers wouldn't work on her. Her issues were just old age, and on top of that, she got treated before other nobles. What a slap in the face, what an insult. Suddenly the girl turned to Basel and asked if she was okay. The heroine got chills. Those words could mess up Gordon and the Duke's rep. In her past life, Diana never saw her as a rival, but now she was clearly nervous. For his lordship's honor, Basel switched into saint mode and wished the girl good luck. Plus, now was the time for everyone to show what they had. A scorching heatwave hit, and the nobles, tired of waiting for Diana, were sweating buckets. So the heroine decided to hook up her 10/1 clients with a refreshing, revitalizing drink. Gordon invented it, and its base was fairy grass. The drink's effectiveness blew all other meds on the market out of the water. The Marquis was sure they just made up the drink's features to sell it. But to his surprise, the heat-exhausted aristocrats decided to give it a shot. There were 600 people at the event, but Basel prepared 500 bottles and had to sell at least half. So when sick customers approached, she discreetly infused the drink with her healing power. Buyers started coming one after another, but now it was time to wait for someone to buy the real product. The Marquis was furious because they were stealing his clients right under his nose. He started yelling mad thinking. Basel envied Diana and was scamming everyone, but it didn't matter anymore because the heroine had grabbed everyone's attention. Meanwhile, Madame Claude watched the scene with interest. The Marquis doubted the quality of Basel's drink since it only cost 1 talent, but the more attention it got, the better. Basel showed off her stand with the drink's limitations clearly stated. Like serious illnesses, plus she didn't get why other kids could use slogans and only she got roasted. The Marquis threatened Basel, and right then the Duke appeared. He wanted that pathetic clown to stop bothering the heroine. No need for that. Basel greeted his lordship and Edwin, who followed him cheerfully. The Duke at that moment didn't get why the Marquis was still there. The man hesitated and quickly started making excuses. His lordship hoped that after satisfying his curiosity, the Marquis would finally take care of his son. Edwin hurried to ask what had happened here before they arrived. Meanwhile, the Duke decided to find out if these drinks were their secret. He was genuinely surprised that such a small head held so many amazing ideas. The Duke and his son decided to buy immediately to try it. The protagonist wanted to offer them 5 bottles for free, but they decided to buy 100 at once. Unfortunately, she couldn't give more than 100 talents since there was a family limit. At that moment, Madame Claude approached to greet his lordship. The Marquis appeared immediately and tried to assist the lady. But Madame got pissed that he treated her like an old lady, plus Diana didn't help at all. The woman was also shook by the Duke showing up since she'd heard he skipped these events because of his son's illness. His lordship quickly cleared things up. Joshua was almost fully recovered thanks to the heroine's help. Madame was hyped to finally meet another candidate. She thought it was cute that Basel sold an energy drink instead of her powers, Madame. Immediately copped a bottle and chugged it down without waiting for any reaction. The heroine got ready to flex her secret weapon. She pulled out a box with only 10 bottles, leaving the Duke and Lady Basel shook. Basel explained it was made for special clients. The base of this facial spray was fairy herb, a rare plant that's fire for whitening skin and smoothing wrinkles, the heroine said. Without hesitation, she handed the first bottle to the lady. In the end, the lady agreed to try it, but warned it takes at least an hour to kick in. When she found out the spray cost 50 talents, the woman was shook. To top Diana, Basel had to be making over 500 talents. So she struck a deal with the lady payment after seeing the effect in an hour, and if it didn't work, the heroine would pay the full price, which seriously impressed the woman. Later, Edwin was mad confused by Gordon's face, who was also shook by the spray's price. Meanwhile, while Basel was gone, she and the Duke sold 50 more bottles. Turns out they already made 200 talents just from selling the drink. The protagonist started thanking Edwin from the bottom of her heart, who thought he hadn't done anything special. The Duke apparently stepped aside to chat with some big shots. Basel didn't get it. Shouldn't the young hero be there too? But Edwin wanted to stay close to the protagonist and nodded toward a side. Looking there, Basel saw the Marquis leaning against the wall, shooting daggers with his eyes. After a bit, a nun showed up out of nowhere. She'd gotten a message about a violation at her post. A participant can only have 1 helper per day, but the young lord helps the protagonist along with the doctor. All Edwin did was help move some boxes a couple times. The only one who could see this and complain was the Marquis. Not a priest, but had mad influence in the temple and didn't want any drama. Most importantly, the young hero defended her from harassment. Basel was super grateful and decided that later Gordon and she would handle it. Anyway, he planned to come back to her once the event wrapped up. When Edwin left, the nun decided it was time to pay the fine. Hearing the 50 talent sum, the doctor and heroine were shook. Kids make a couple talents, so the fine was probably just to scare her. No choice if this got attention. They'd think her goods were trash. Madame Claude, pissed about the fine, handed 50 talents to the nun. The woman looked so young again that many didn't even recognize her. At first she wanted to buy all of Basel's products, but instead brought her friends. In the end, they didn't just sell the 10 sprays but only had 180 bottles of the energy drink left. According to the protagonist's rough math, they'd already made over 700 talents. Basil was hyped about the product's success but needed to check something else in the sacred scriptures. Since the event had everyone at the orphanage busy, she could sneak in easily. So, the protagonist got to the temple library without a hitch. The first 5 volumes of the sacred scriptures contained the doctrine about the goddess, and starting from volume 6 is the description of each era. That volume was only available in the library. Basil hoped to find info about her regression and the missing heart. Archaea was the first saint to reverse time. By giving her heart to the goddess, knowing why she did it and what happened next, the heroine hoped to solve the mystery of her heart. The first part of volume 6 narrated Archaea's childhood, her meeting with the goddess and the awakening of her powers. Back then, evil lurked everywhere. And allied with the Callias house, the saint led a crusade. Later, she placed her heart on the primal plateau where the goddess slept and rewound time 4 years. 4 years later, after a successful crusade finale, she returned and founded the first orphanage. The strangest part was the causes of her death. They were still unknown, and unlike Archaea Basil, she didn't give her heart to the goddess but to Edwin. It was a mystery where to go now to get it back. The primordial plateau mentioned in the book is now a pilgrimage spot for spiritual leaders, but a kid couldn't just show up there like that. Realizing more than half an hour had passed, Basil ran back with all her might and suddenly heard the noise of a fight. Tommy and his crew were beating up Ismael. He was the same kid who before the protagonist got locked in the detention room and had his powers taken away. When they sent him back to class, the teachers started treating him special, which pissed off the other kids. Since the kid was now mute and powerless, basically useless even now, Ismael preferred getting kicked over staying in that room. The protagonist pretended to call the principal, and at her shout the bullies ran off. Ismael lay on the floor frozen in pain, and all he could see was the silhouette of a girl with a golden glow in her hand. He recognized that girl, always getting into fights and looking like no one's friend. Ismael understood she'd been through worse than him before. Seeing her brave face now, he couldn't get how she escaped that nightmare. Grabbing her sleeve, he started begging for help. Hearing Ismael's weak voice, Basil froze, recognizing it, and looking at the boy, she realized he was Montes III. The current father had adopted him, and the boy would become one of Diana's main love interests originally. After the current father died, Dunkeski was the top candidate for his spot but couldn't take the throne, because he lacked the necessary seal. Later, the temple held a vote to choose the priest as pope. Then the adopted son of the late father showed up with that seal and took his place. The heroine never even imagined it was actually Ismael. In the past, he forced Basil to be a candidate for saint, then backed Diana at the ceremony. The heroine was furious. She saw it as a blatant disrespect. Montes looked at her skeptically. What had she done as a saint candidate? While Basil made excuses about lack of chances, Diana healed the sick and fought monsters up north. At the time, it didn't seem unfair. But now the heroine understood Montes just made the best choice, so she only wanted to help that orphan kid. Basil had never healed so many wounds and was nervous, but everything went well. Suddenly, Ismael regained consciousness and looked surprised at his savior. At that moment, they heard the announcement for the kids to hand over their earned talents. The protagonist wanted to run there, but the boy grabbed the edge of her dress. He wanted to thank her, and she faked surprise. Hearing his voice, it turned out he'd faked being mute to escape the obedience room. Ismael also knew she always wanted to outshine Diana and was ready to help her become saint. After a while, Basil arrived just in time for the talent count, all thanks to the Duke who carried her. Turns out, while she was gone, a hooded guy bought 100 more bottles of the drink. A secret client left a note thanking the heroine for her treatment. Before Basil's eyes appeared Caesar Esterod, whom she'd met recently. Also today was the day Diana would meet the second prince. But the heroine healed the crown prince, and it looked like he'd be here instead of his brother. Meanwhile, the pontiff solemnly greeted everyone gathered. The priests prepared to use the cup that automatically counts the talents earned by the kids. As expected, Diana outdid everyone, winning 770 talents. However, Basil topped her, snagging 952 coins amid general silence. The winner was invited to the stage. The Marquis jumped up instantly, calling this nonsense. He decided his protege had been blatantly robbed of 100 talents. The man looked stunned and didn't seem like he was lying. One of the nuns rushed to calm him, thinking these issues should be discussed after the event. But the pontiff was already very serious and intended to get to the bottom of it, gathering his aides. He started thoroughly checking the academic books. After reading that Basil was the only one who'd received 100 talents twice, he turned to her. The first buyer was Duke Callios and the second was listed as anonymous. The protagonist guessed he was probably the crown prince but thought it was too risky to reveal it. Seeing her hesitate to respond, the Marquis started accusing Basil of theft and the crowd around him backed him up. They began to pity the Duke, but His Excellency exploded with rage, recalling how the Marquis blatantly stole clients from the heroine, and now he had the nerve to accuse a girl of stealing 100 talents right under his nose. The man flushed with anger, unable to understand how the Duke dared insult the victims. The pontiff sternly scolded them both. No fighting in a holy place, especially in front of kids. After apologizing to Basil, he wanted to hear her side of the story. Suddenly, a voice rang out from the crowd. It was the crown prince deciding to rebel. He didn't want to wait in the long line to see Diana, so he chose to buy Basil a drink. Caesar didn't want to reveal himself before the ceremony ended, but now he had no choice. At that moment, one of the Pope's attendants noticed something fishy in Basel's ledger. Other kids' fines didn't exceed 10 talents. But the heroine got hit with a 50-talent fine all at once. The ceremony ended, and the pontiff withdrew with those involved to investigate. The Pope noticed the gap between fines and collected money was over 100 talents. Desperate, the nun accused the Marquis, who supposedly gave her 100 talents to fine Basel. The man was shocked by such a lie. If he didn't give more than 50, the woman was sentenced, and the imperial court decided to deal with the Marquis. The man failed his duty as a noble and must take responsibility after this scandal. The award ceremony took place with His Highness and the Pope on stage. Basel thanked everyone who helped her and promised to keep producing. At the end, she thanked her top clients, including the Duke and Madame Claude. Edwin got ready to hear his name, but Basel ignored him and expressed huge gratitude to the Crown Prince. Later, the protagonist was super happy about her first earned money. She understood. It was all thanks to His Highness and the others. Unlike everyone else, Edwin didn't seem to share the general joy and wanted to head home soon. The Duke had to leave for a banquet and leave the protagonist behind. When he left, Diana unexpectedly approached Basel. She thought if she charged a high price for healing, maybe she'd become a saint. The protagonist saw no reason to be upset, since life always gives new chances. When Basel restarted her life, she decided to fix her mistakes and restore her relationship with the girl. But after Diana hurt her loved ones, the protagonist started taking things seriously. Suddenly, Basel saw Ismail, watching them silently from afar. Leaving Diana behind, she ran straight to him. The heroine realized the Marquis's weird behavior was the kid's doing. The man gave 100 talents to the nun and didn't even remember it. Plus, Ismail was clearly trying to do something to her too. At that moment, he didn't get why his power wasn't working on her. And now Basel wanted to know why. He even tried using his power on her. Turns out he could control people with words. The kid wanted to make a deal with the Duke, forced the Marquis to make the saint and become the Pope himself. He had no guarantee the heroine would want that, so he decided to use her. But in the end, his power failed, and Beckel had already won. Actually, she knew he'd become a great priest in the future. The protagonist decided to help him be happy earlier than in the original story. At that moment, Edwin approached, wanting to know what they were doing there. Grabbing Beckel and pulling her close, he forbade the stranger to touch her. The protagonist hurried to clarify Ismail hadn't done anything to her. Those words didn't help at all, and both guys looked super hostile. Then Basel realized words were useless, suddenly hugged the Duke's son, and ran off. Later, Edwin decided to ask if that kid was really her friend. He didn't get why she'd be friends with such a useless dude. Those words sounded weird, since the Duke's son and Ismail were supposed to know each other today. So they didn't know each other. Also, Edwin looked tense and angry all the time. Unable to take it, the protagonist apologized to him. The Duke's son was surprised and didn't understand what he'd done wrong. He was sure she hadn't done anything bad and didn't need to apologize. Edwin didn't get it either. Why the Crown Prince was talking to her so casually, like they were buddies. Hearing they just met today, he wanted to know why Basel mentioned His Highness in his speech. Now the main girl knew the real reason behind the guy's mood and was shook. She quickly cleared up that she thanked the Crown Prince just as a publicity stunt, but still she was way more grateful to Edwin. Embarrassed and hugging her, the Duke's son just wanted her to get some rest. Days later, Basel rushed to meet the Duke. The more time passed, the clearer it was that the world was drifting from the original plot, and now the main girl was bringing half the festival's profits to his lordship. Plus, they managed to create a new kind of fairy herb, and Basel wanted to grow it in the duchy. That's why she hoped to open a shop on the priciest street in the capital, also using one of the Duke's buildings. Unfortunately, there were no empty buildings, and his lordship understood she wanted an investment. But that made zero sense. With those words, he handed the main girl a document that arrived yesterday from the imperial court for winning the contest. Basel and her legal rep had to visit the palace to receive their prize. Besides the grand prize, there were also awards of 500 gold coins. While the heroine was hyped about the incoming cash, the doctor didn't get why he was just called Old Man Gordon. At that moment, His Excellency decided to ask since when the doctor was her tutor. Gordon turned pale and immediately decided to transfer guardianship to his lordship. The next day, Basel and the Duke visited the imperial palace. His Excellency held her in his arms the whole time, which made the heroine feel chill, all thanks to memories from her past life. The Crown Prince was super surprised by the Duke's visit since the registered tutor was Old Man Gordon, but deciding it wasn't that big a deal. He ordered the butler to bring tea for everyone. Already at the festival, the heir noticed that His Excellency cared way too much about Basel, like she was his secret daughter. The Duke thought that was almost true, and never hid his affection. Seeing things escalating, the heroine started gesturing like crazy then. The Crown Prince wanted to know how her plushy buddy was doing. The Duke was stunned. How did the heir know about my Gilo? Basel remembered she hadn't told him anything and panicked. The Duke clarified he wasn't going to scold her, just wanted to talk as tutor and pupil. The Crown Prince recalled his lordship had an urgent meeting. Seconds later, Logan reported the meeting was postponed. Hearing he had to go right away, the Duke was frozen. In the end, he had to leave Beckel alone with His Highness. Remembering how she fought for the prizes, Caesar didn't get it. Don't they pay the girl Basel? He immediately apologized for his behavior at the Merchant Guild. Turns out he wasn't offended, and was super grateful for the help. In particular, the Crown Prince was really satisfied with the heroine's treatment. Basel was shook and I didn't get how he knew about her healing power. Meanwhile, the butler Jonathan was happy to see the teddy possessed by an evil spirit. The heroine clarified the teddy was just a doll with a soul, gifted by his lordship. Before Caesar thought the Duke helped her out of pity, and was surprised he gave something so useful to Basil. If that weren't the case, the crown prince would have gladly kept the heroine by his side. In any case, for saving him, he wanted to give her a little reward. Caesar knew she was looking for a building and was ready to give her a whole shop. Basil, for her part, would gather info on aristocrats as she started her business. All this was necessary to help the crown prince create a secret fund. At that moment, the main girl realized the contest was organized by the heir to find allies, and since he's willing to trust even a kid like her, it was clear what situation Caesar was in at the imperial palace. Basil felt sorry for him, but didn't want to get involved with the imperial family again. So with a bow, she decided to decline his offer. The crown prince was bummed to hear that, but wasn't gonna push plus. There was another winner he wanted to ask for this favor. At that moment, the butler got a letter, saying the other winner would be delayed a bit. Hearing it was a guy from the merchant guild, Galagos, Basil went pale instantly. The crown prince sincerely hoped Adolf would make it back to the palace safe and sound. In his past life, Adolf Galagos was the one who handed the poison to the heroine to kill Diana. And he was also a loyal advisor to Caesar. Later, the crown prince himself fell into a coma poisoned with the same venom meant for Diana. Turns out right now Caesar's about to get an ally who'll stab him in the back in the future. At that moment, Edwin burst into the room, found out his dad was in a meeting, and rushed here as fast as he could. Grabbing her hand, the duke's son dragged the heroine toward the exit. The crown prince smiled, thinking he was invisible to the young lord. Edwin reacted instantly and greeted the empire's little son. Bexel was only thinking about Caesar, who was headed for disaster, so he decided to pretend he knew nothing and just bounce. But unable to hold back, he agreed to the crown prince's deal if she alone was made the winner. Not just Caesar, but even Edwin was shook by this unexpected twist. To mark the occasion, the crown prince decided they could switch to a more casual way of talking after this. Basil was walking in a good mood, while the duke's son looked super confused. The heroine was happy, not only for separating Adolf from his highness, but also for scoring funding for the business. Turning to Edwin, she remembered her promise not to get mad over dumb stuff. Turns out the duke's son was just really worried about her. He got her talent and why the crown prince was so interested in her, but at the same time, he didn't want her getting close to the royal palace crowd. Basil genuinely appreciated the care behind his words. Right then, they accidentally ran into the second prince, Kirian Estrad. Alongside him was Diana, who was super happy to see the young duke. She hurried to explain to his highness that she was the girl from the orphanage. Kirian was thrilled to meet the fake Santa candidate. Edwin grabbed the protagonist's hand. Outraged by the second prince's words, he couldn't believe Kirian thought the duke was backing a fake. Despite his higher status, the second prince trembled under the duke's son's gaze and stepped back. Basil realized she was just a normal girl, and his fear faded. Diana instantly felt glad to have run into her at the palace. The girl had come there at the empress's call, who needed her healing. And she didn't get why the heroine was at the palace. Hearing the crown prince had called her, Diana was stunned. Learning she'd won first place in the contest, Kirian was shook because it was supposed to be Adolf. He also remembered his mother's words about how she saved her older brother with her toy. Surprised by such a bold claim, Basil realized the heir had been deliberately attacked. For a moment, he saw violet tongues of fire coming from Kirian, thinking someone was spreading them on purpose. He decided to head back ASAP. The next day, the heroine healed Joshua again thanks to Gordon's special medicine and Basil's power. The boy's orange flame almost vanished. The day before, the heroine received the official document for her prize and the promised 500 gold coins. Immediately after, she handed all the money to Dr. Gordon, who made a huge contribution to the medicines and to Basil becoming Santa. Meanwhile, Joshua confessed that since he was a kid, he dreamed of visiting the imperial palace, so the heroine quickly clarified it was insanely boring there. Once he recovered, she'd take him to her shop on Main Street instead of that lame palace. Shortly after, Basil showed up before the Duke by invitation. At that moment, His Excellency was getting a report from Logan about the battle against the demons. The advisor headed out, and the Duke was glad the heroine won the prize, determined to boost her business. His lordship gave Basil a checkbook. Logan immediately protested because, after all, even Lady Diana hadn't gotten anything like that. The heroine recalled that the advisor handled the Callias family's finances. Logan didn't get why Basil was getting such special treatment since Diana never got anything like that from them. Then the Duke rushed to remind him about the Emma and Sven situation that the counselor was responsible for when Logan left. His lordship apologized to Basil for what he had just witnessed. The heroine decided everything was chill, plus the crown prince had already promised her a free building. In return, they had to set up a secret fund for His Highness. The Duke got that Caesar was looking for the family's backing. Callias and he was pleased about it. He was also glad Basil was handling the business, but still wanted to see her as a kid sometimes. Edwin matured way too fast, which made his lordship feel like a bad dad. The protagonist was curious about what he meant mentioning Sven and Emma in the convo with Logan. Turns out after his wife died, he fell into despair and a bunch of servants left during those tough times. It was Logan who managed to bring someone back together. Anyway, the Duke blamed himself for everything, something Basil totally disagreed with. Leaving the office, she remembered how Emma got obsessed with Joshua and Sven was growing more and more resentful toward the Duke. Suddenly, Logan popped up in front of her, scaring the girl big time. She was super curious about how he planned to exactly use his checkbook. The protagonist decided that was his secret. Seeing her shake, the counselor asked if the young lady was okay. At that moment, a violet flame engulfed her whole body, fleeing to another room. Basil didn't get why she hadn't felt it before. Now she had this feeling that a sinister shadow was looming over the duchy. After that, she watched people closely for days, looking for other carriers of the violet flame, but luckily besides Logan, no one else had that dangerous power. She had to keep him away from the Duke, but without proof that was impossible. The heroine decided to ask the butler. How long had the counselor been serving his lordship? It turned out it had been 5 years since Logan took on that role. Learning Logan was also raised in the temple orphanage, Basil was even more stunned. If you think about it, Donkeski knew too much about the Callis family affairs. So if Logan was a spy, Sven and Emma could be part of the plan to take down his lordship's heirs. Meanwhile, the cookies were packed, and it was time for Basil to go on a picnic with the orphanage kids, but before leaving, she decided to stop by Edwin's place to get his permission. No one was in his room, so leaving a note on the desk, she hurried out. Arriving there, the protagonist was glad she could bring Mihail along. Near the carriage, she was greeted by the new temple director, High Priest Magnus. Basil decided to walk alone for a bit, since she had her own agenda there. The first thing she did was find Ismail, who was sitting alone in the temple. The boy was attacked again, but there was nothing to do since the aggressors were backed by the noble family. The protagonist wanted to offer the Callias family's help, but Ismail knew everything would get worse once she left. Knowing he would support Diana in the future, Basil didn't dare ask him, but gathering courage, she decided to ask if he knew anything about the dark purple color. Ismail was surprised and confused. Hadn't she studied the sacred scriptures? That color symbolized heretics who worshipped demons. Luckily, they all vanished along with the holy war. That's why the boy was puzzled and didn't understand. Had she seen someone who mastered the purple flame, Basil decided not to risk it and pretended it was just curiosity. Could that be why she felt that nasty vibe near Diana in her past life? She knew nothing because she'd lost her healing sight, and if now the protagonist was the only one who could see that energy, getting help would be super tough. However, first things first, she needed proof to kick Logan out of the duchy. She wanted to leave ASAP, but suddenly Ismail had more info. Apparently, someone was still using the obedience room. The temple kept taking gifted kids, but none of them came back. Getting help would be super tough, but first things first, she needed to find proof to kick Logan out of the duchy. She wanted to bounce ASAP, but suddenly Ismail had more info apparently. Someone was still using the obedience room. The temple kept taking gifted kids, but none of them came back. At that moment, High Priest Magnus stormed into the room. He figured they were probably just playing there with a teddy bear, which was apparently normal, but Basil decided to keep watching a bit more. Suddenly, Magnus got curious because two voices could be clearly heard outside, determined to use it to her advantage. The heroine pretended she was narrating the game for two, acting like they were playing again. She wrote a secret message on the boy's palm. Seeing them, the High Priest remembered the past and his old buddy Logan. After that, he burst into violet flames. But the heroine was just waiting for that. She quickly turned to Ismail and ordered him to act immediately. Grabbing him by the head, the guy thought the director was now obeying him. Luckily it worked, and Magnus started looking like a zombie. The effect would last an hour, and meanwhile Basil wanted to send a letter to Logan from Magnus asking him to come. Basil couldn't reveal all the reasons yet, but promised to do it in the future. Staring at the heroine, he decided to trust her. Upon receiving the letter, the Duke's advisor was shocked. He didn't get it. Were there problems with the ingredient supply? Basil calmly watched his departure from the window. Now there was less than an hour left to find proof that Logan was a heretic. The servants knew the advisor was only leaving the duchy on his lord's orders. He spends work hours in his room, so the proof had to be searched there. But no matter how much Basil looked, it was all in vain. Suddenly, he saw a painting on the wall depicting the Holy War of Aria. Moving the painting aside, the heroine found a hiding spot with jars full of disgusting creatures. Suddenly, she heard a door opening. Logan entered the room at that moment and didn't understand what the hell was going on. Magnus was surprisingly calm, and Ismail sat beside him. The director thought this would make their meeting look less suspicious. The guy knew he could only control the High Priest for another half hour. Meanwhile, Edwin decided Basil needed to learn to hide better. Turns out he was also looking for something here, and the heroine decided to search together. After a few minutes, they found absolutely nothing. Basil looked tiredly at the painting and suddenly noticed something weird. The demons in it were smiling. And the goddess's spear was broken. Noticing there were 2 layers of paper, Edwin ripped off the top one abruptly. Inside was an ancient tongue and inscriptions that insulted the believers of Aria. And under the inscription, calling to worship the true goddess, hung a portrait of Diana.